Extracting Wisdom from the Book, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, written by Carl Jung. Why are dreams more important than real events in understanding a person's life? Because dreams are the language of the deep psyche, containing messages inaccessible to conscious mind. They reveal the true self beyond social masks. Jung discovered more about himself through dreams and through his external achievements, as dreams connect us to layers of meaning that waking life obscures. Why does denying our flaws make us more controlled by them? Because rejected qualities form the shadow, in the unconscious, growing stronger rather than disappearing and controlling behavior from behind the scenes. People often see in others precisely what they refuse to accept in themselves. Confronting and integrating the shadow is the first step toward genuine maturity and wholeness. Why do identical symbols appear in all cultures despite no contact? Because there exists a collective unconscious inherited through evolution, containing universal archetypes like the mother, hero, and wise old man. These symbols emerge in mythology, dreams, and art across all peoples because they are the shared spiritual heritage of humanity, transcending individual experience and cultural boundaries. Why did Jung insist religion is not superstition, a psychological necessity? Because humans need sacred experience to connect with unconscious depths and find meaning. Religion provides symbols that help integrate the psyche. People who lose this dimension often fall into emptiness and neurosis. Jung witnessed many patients who healed only when they recovered spiritual connection beyond rational materialism. Why are strange coincidences not random, but deeply meaningful? Because the phenomenon of synchronicity exists, where two events have no causal connection, yet are linked through meaning. Psyche and matter are not separate, but have mysterious interconnections. Jung encountered many cases where dreams predicted events or patients' thoughts coincided with external phenomena in ways classical science cannot explain. Why is old age not decline but the most important life stage? Because this is when individuation reaches its peak, when people transcend social roles to discover their true self. The first half of life turns outward, conquering the world, while the second half turns inward, exploring oneself. Jung wrote his most profound works after 60, when he had reconciled all inner contradictions. Why are silence and solitude necessary conditions for spiritual development? Because only in stillness can people hear the voice of the unconscious. External noise drowns out the inner voice. Jung built his stone tower at Bollingen to escape the modern world. Living there simply without electricity or telephone, he found his deepest insights about the psyche in that sacred solitude. Why are psychological crises opportunities for rebirth? Because crisis signals the old ego is no longer adequate and transformation is needed. Suffering forces confrontation with what has been repressed. Jung went through an extremely dangerous period of confrontation with the unconscious after breaking with Freud, but this very crisis shaped his entire psychology and gave birth to analytical psychology. Why do mythological stories still have power for modern people? Because they express archetypal patterns from the collective unconscious, not historical facts, but timeless psychological truths. The hero's journey in mythology is the individuation process everyone undergoes. When reading myths, we recognize our own story, reflected in these ancient narratives that speak directly to the soul. Why do children often have sharper intuition than adults? Because they remain directly connected to the unconscious, not yet covered by rational consciousness and social conventions. Jung remembered childhood dreams more clearly and many later events because they contained crucial messages about his life path. Many childhood dreams prophesied his destiny and mission long before conscious understanding. Why did Jung believe encountering death is life's greatest lesson? Because facing death helps people live more authentically. After his near-fatal heart attack, Jung had near-death experiences showing consciousness exists independent of the body. This confirmed his belief in continuity beyond death and freed him from fear, allowing him to live each day with complete meaning and presence. Why is understanding dreams more important than any psychological therapy? Because dreams are self-healing messages from the unconscious, containing solutions to problems the conscious mind cannot see. Jung didn't analyze a dialogue with dreams like conversing with a wise friend. Many of his patients healed not because he cured them but because they learned to listen to themselves through their dream language. Why are the most successful people those who harmonize opposites within themselves? Because individuation is the process of integrating contradictory aspects like masculine and feminine, reason and emotion, good and evil into a whole. People who identify with only one pole lack wholeness. Jung discovered that the more fully developed people become, the greater their creative capacity and unique contribution to the world. Why do numbers and symbols have power beyond reason? Because they speak the language of the collective unconscious. The number for symbolizing completeness appears in all cultures. The circle is the symbol of spiritual wholeness. Jung drew mandalas during periods of disorder and found they reflected his psychic state in miraculous ways, providing orientation when consciousness was lost. Why was the relationship with Freud the greatest tragedy of Jung's life? Because Freud was the spiritual father figure Jung had to overcome to find his own path. The painful separation was necessary because Jung couldn't accept the view that only sexuality drives the psyche. This confrontation plunged Jung into deep crisis, but also gave birth to analytical psychology as a distinct approach. Why were Jung's parapsychological experiences not hallucinations? Because psyche and matter have blurred boundaries. The spiritual phenomenon Jung witnessed, like objects breaking without reason or seeing spirits of the dead, reflect a reality broader than materialist science. He carefully documented these experiences, not to prove anything but to understand the nature of consciousness beyond conventional limits. Why does the West need to learn from Eastern philosophy? Because the East understands the integration of opposites, while the West is trapped in dualistic thinking. Concepts like yin-yang or meditation help balance the psyche. Jung incorporated the I Ching and yoga into his work, believing the future belongs to those who synthesize Eastern and Western wisdom into new understanding. Why did Jung say meaning is more important than happiness? Because happiness depends on external circumstances, while meaning comes from connection to the eternal. When finding one's role in a larger order, people accept all ups and downs. Jung experienced much suffering and loneliness, but never felt his life meaningless because he knew he was fulfilling his mission to explore psyche's nature. Why do the most distant memories shape entire lives? Because they are decisions of the soul before conscious awareness. Jung remembered from age 3 to 4 dreams and experiences that contained all the themes he would research later. This is not coincidence, but evidence the soul knows its path beforehand and prepares from very early, carrying the blueprint of destiny. Why are art and creativity the most powerful healing methods? Because they allow the unconscious to express without censorship from consciousness. When painting or writing, people access deep psychic layers. Jung encouraged patients to create freely rather than just talk. Many found healing through allowing images and symbols from the unconscious to emerge into form and consciousness. Why must the elderly prepare for death as the young prepare for life? Because death is not an ending but transition to another state. Living without contemplating death means not living the second half fully. Jung spent his final years reconciling with the idea of death and discovered it brings peace rather than fear when faced correctly, seeing it as natural completion of the life cycle. Why is what we hate in others a mirror of ourselves? Because we project our shadow onto others. What we deny in ourselves we see clearly in others and react strongly to. Jung taught patients to withdraw projections rather than blame. When acknowledging our own flaws, we become more tolerant, and relationships are healed through honest self-recognition. Why does life present challenges exactly matching our capacity? Because the soul knows what we need to develop and creates situations for us to face what must be learned. Difficulties are not punishment, but invitations to evolve. Jung noticed each crisis in his life opened new depths of understanding that comfort never would have brought, proving adversity serves growth. Why did Jung believe God needs humans to become conscious of himself? Because human consciousness is the means for the universe to know itself. Through our psyche, the great unconscious sees itself. Each person completing themselves helps the whole evolve. Jung felt his mission was not just personal, but serving the self-awareness process of the entire cosmos unfolding through human consciousness. Why do people considered mad often touch profound truth? Because they break boundaries between conscious and unconscious, accessing contents normal people cannot reach. The danger is being swallowed, but if they maintain some consciousness, they bring back precious messages. Jung's own breakdown after leaving Freud gave him insights no textbook could teach about psyche's depths. Why is living someone else's way the greatest sin? Because each person has a unique individuation path. Living according to social or family expectations is betraying the soul. Jung refused many opportunities for fame to follow his own way, teaching that humanity's only responsibility is becoming most fully themselves, fulfilling their unique purpose in existence.